Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Hello, everybody. I am Goud, and you are listening to the Goud Crowd. And in case you haven't figured it out, the show is named after me. Actually, specifically, it's named after what supporters used to call themselves when I ran for clerk. And so I actually had like a really big volunteer kind of army, and they'd do all sorts of stuff because they wanted me to be the county clerk. But and they started calling themselves the Goud Crowd. So I adopted it because I think it's kind of cool. And eventually it turned into this show. So, okay, so we got a lot to talk about today. As you know, just before we start, we are on almost every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. And we're on kmmu.org, or you can listen to the show on my X handle, which is Goud, 4 Utah. And you can also listen at Utah Main Street Media. I think that's right, Mr. Producer? Or is it Main Street Media Utah? I was getting kind of mixed up. On X, on Rumble, and on YouTube. So with that, let's get started. So first, I wanted to start by talking about elections. And specifically, this is popped as an issue because of what's going on right now in LA, right? And I think in LA, they're just outright stealing the election right in front of your face. It's actually kind of amazing to watch because I think it's brazen. And then you can also see all the people that'll make excuses for it. So for example, I see Republicans that are now saying things like, oh, well, you know, if you would have ballot harvested, you would have actually gotten the votes. And it's like, that's not what's going on here. There is no way that a person who was in third place with all the ballots that they counted up until election day and through election day, then ends up becoming first place with ballots that arrive after election day. I'm sorry, that's not like a real thing. They're cheating. And we'll get into a little bit of it. The system itself is set up for cheating. If you talk to Californians who are honest about their elections, they will tell you that there is widespread cheating in California. They know that. And so basically, and this happens in every state where the Democrats take control. They actually put in place systems that allow them to openly cheat. I mean, that you can never vote them out of office. So for example, I'll use Virginia as an example. As soon as the Democrats got into power in Virginia, the first thing they did was change all the election rules. And it means that you'll never have a Republican governor there, and you'll never have a Republican legislature. They rigged it with rules that allow cheating. It legalizes cheating, that it'll never, ever flip red again. That's just how this stuff works. The Republicans cheat too. And let's talk about that first. Because so here in Utah, I saw Michael Clare actually posted this. And the Davis County clerk, Brian McKenzie, he was awarded the 2026 Outstanding Clerk of the Year by the Utah Association of Counties, which is funded with our tax money through our counties. And they now gave this guy an award. And if you understand what happened in 2024, Brian McKenzie was actually the linchpin for stealing the 2024 GOP primary for governor. And what I mean is this. In Utah, for those of you who don't know, you have to, in order to get on the GOP primary ballot, you have two pathways. The first is you have to get at least 40% of the vote at the Utah GOP convention from state delegates in the case of a statewide race. In 24, Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor Henderson did not get at least 40% of the vote. And so their only mechanism to get onto the ballot was signatures. In order to use that method, they needed to get at least 28,000 verified signatures from registered Republicans in the state. They didn't do that. They didn't get that many signatures. Instead, And the reason they didn't get that many is because it turned out there were thousands of fraudulent signatures on their signature petitions. They knew it. Their signature gathering company called Gathering Inc. knew it and still submitted the petitions. They were processed, and both Lieutenant Governor Henderson, who is the head of our elections because we don't have a Secretary of State for whatever reason, and Governor Cox placed themselves onto the GOP primary ballot illegally. Now, there was a series of events that happened where Michael Clara and some other people actually discovered that there were criminal investigations going on to signature fraud on a different candidate's petitions that also used the same company as Governor Cox, and then they were able to link it together. And over the past couple of years, we have exposed so much information showing that they were not qualified for the GOP primary ballot, and they cheated. And here's the thing: is they knew from the beginning they didn't have the signatures. They didn't care. And I think what that actually indicates is that they're not the only people that have cheated their way onto a primary ballot. I know I saw something recently that John Curtis also didn't get enough signatures to be on the Senate primary ballot. And I suspect that if we go back further, that there are lots of people who didn't get the signatures they needed to actually get onto the primary ballot and are in office now and are illegitimate. What we know for sure is that Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor Henderson are illegitimate. They are frauds. They are cheaters. Lieutenant Governor Henderson is actually a pathological liar. So she's cheated. That's not the only election she's cheated in. That's the one that involved her. But just, Celeste Malloy is running for Congress. She also cheated. She used her power running our elections to cheat in that election twice. The first time when Celeste filed to run, she didn't actually meet the residency requirements for living in Utah because she lives in Northern Virginia. And yeah, exactly. Mr. Producer Jester, she was not even a resident. Correct. She was not. She actually still is not a resident. She lives in Northern Virginia. She did not switch her residency until it was too late. Now what she does is she uses her sister's address in Cedar City, but she does not have a home here. She doesn't have an apartment. She doesn't have a condo. She has nothing in Utah. She is not a resident of Utah, has not been a resident of Utah since at least 2019, and it may be longer. I really have no sense of when she ever lived in the state. So just understand. So that initial time of letting her run, that was cheating. Lieutenant Governor Henderson knew it at the time and then sent her a text message actually being like, oh, are you okay if I use this picture? It's the one that makes you look the best. I mean, these two are they're basically like scissor sisters, communicating as if there's a really close relationship, which is odd because the way that Celeste has portrayed herself is she was just an attorney, kind of doing her job. And I don't think that's what that was. I think she was installed that first time because she should not have been allowed to file to run. And the comparison is when Phil ran for governor and he had Lane Bangater as his running mate, Lieutenant Governor Henderson's staff met Phil at the door of their office and wouldn't let him file to put Lane on the ballot. You can kind of see the difference in how they treat people. When they want the person in office, they let you cheat. When they don't want you in office, they put up all sorts of roadblocks, even if there's a legitimate fight to be had about whether the person's qualified or not. Now, the second time they cheated was in the 24 GOP primary. There were ballots that were shipped to Vegas. So people timely put them into the mailbox. They got shipped to Vegas. And then the lieutenant governor's office refused to allow them to be counted, even though they knew that they had been put in the mail on time. And the only reason that they were postmarked the next day is because the post office took them to Vegas and they got postmarked there after midnight. And I think that there is leeway in the law that would have allowed them to count those votes. They didn't do it because it came from areas where Colby Jenkins, Celeste Malloy's primary challenger, was actually beating her by like 20 points. So he would have won that election. And but they didn't want that. And so that should kind of give you a sense of what this is about. The cheating is happening here. And I think it's actually widespread. I don't think it's isolated to certain races. I'll give you an example of why I think that's the case. I've already given, well, first I've given you 3 examples of cheating. I'm sure if we dig, there'll be more. But also, Mr. Producer said Vegas is a post office depot for Southern Utah. It's crazy. Yeah, it totally is. And actually, by the way, if you are voting in the primary election, I actually I don't think you should use I do not think you should put your mail ballot into the mail. I think you should either vote in person or put it in a drop box. And the reason I say the drop box is okay is that it helps with the chain of custody. Your county clerk will go to the drop box and pick up the ballots. It's not shipped to like a postal service center, then sorted. Fewer hands will touch it, and I think that's better. Obviously, I think the best way to vote is in person, but look, I understand in Utah people get their mail ballots, they like them, but the least you could do is do it in the most secure way possible to make sure that your ballot actually gets to its destination on time. Because they changed the law. So if your ballot, it used to be your ballot just had to be postmarked by election day, and then it could show up until the canvass, which typically happened 2 weeks after election day. Now the rule is your ballot has to actually arrive by 8 p.m. on election day. So you don't have any leeway. It needs to get there that night. I guess how you make sure it gets there, either vote in person, where you don't have to worry about that, or number 2, take your mail ballot and put it in a drop box. If you put it in by 8 p.m. on election day, it's on time. Okay, so now the other thing is, it's not just the Republicans cheating. I think the Democrats in Utah cheat too. They just, so for example, you can kind of see it's working its way, I think, in the CD1 race. The establishment of both parties wants Ben McAdams, but Nate Bluin is trying to beat him. And so I think that Republican and Democrat establishment will work together, even if Nate, let's say, could win it. I don't know if he can or not, but I think they would cheat to make sure it's Ben McAdams because he's corrupt and he will allow them to continue to do what they've been doing all these years. Well, so this is what I was going to say. So if you look at the way the establishment operates, they spend inordinate amounts of money and time trying to knock out conservatives in races instead of trying to knock out Democrats. And so just an example. Let me think of, the Trevor Lee race, right? Trevor Lee is he's a good House rep, but they want him out of office. They don't like that guy. It's because he keeps running conservative legislation that they don't want to even see the light of day. They don't want him running bills to shut off benefits to illegal aliens. They want those benefits to continue because a lot of their donors benefit from it. I think the LDS Church actually supports it because they want to convert them and fill their pews. I get it. By the way, it's not just them. All the churches operate in the same manner. The Catholic Church does the same thing. So that's what they want. And they want to knock out Trevor Lee. So they're spending time, money, and all this stuff. But then they left the Salt Lake County Clerk's office. There's no competitor. It's run by a Democrat. Why wouldn't you try to turn that to a Republican? Because that would be actually helpful to Republicans, right? That would help us have election integrity in a county that has 1/3 of the population of the state. Even when I ran for county clerk, there was not money to be had. It's not like the moneyed interest in the Republican Party were supporting anybody. I don't think anyone who would have run for that race would not have gotten money. They do not want a Republican or a conservative, I should say, in that seat. They prefer the Democrat. And you can see this in Utah County where they're trying to knock out Aaron Davidson. It's for the same reason. They want to knock out Aaron because he's very data-based and he's actually exposed problems in the election system. That's not what they want. They want somebody who will allow them to continue to cheat. Mr. Producer said Lutheran Social Services is one of the biggest beneficiaries of benefits to illegal aliens. There you go. Like I said, it's not just the LDS Church. I think in Utah, the LDS Church obviously has a bigger impact on politics because I would say I think all but one elected official on the Republican side right now is LDS. And so, it is more open bordersy because I think that's what church leadership wants. And like I said, but also Catholics, Lutherans, all the churches, instead of trying to bring Americans into their folds and help them, find their way to God, they would rather import people and try to convert them. And so to me, that's a problem in and of itself, because what we should want to do is make our own nation more religious, and instead what we do is we import people, and then apparently I guess someone thinks they're going to convert them. I'll just tell you, like, a lot of them they support bringing Muslims to the country, and I think some of that is a very naive thought that you're going to convert a Muslim to the LDS faith, to the Catholic faith. That's never going to happen. Never. It's extremely rare you'll even be able to do that, because that faith is very, very powerful, and it's more likely that the children of that faith will convert your kids than the other way around. And I'm just telling you that from what I've seen. Okay, so and there's more. Okay, I have more here. Hold on. So that's Utah's elections. It's a mess. I just think we have a lot more fraud than what we've actually identified, and we need to actually start rooting it out. We've had some improvements, but not good enough. So then California. So now you see what's going on in LA, where I think they are outright stealing it from having Spencer Pratt in that second place spot. Because there's some people that are like, well, the Democrats would rather have Spencer Pratt because he's MAGA. And I don't think that's actually it. I think they'd actually rather have Nithya Raman, because I think she's actually more easily beatable by Karen Bass. Yeah, and it's because she's not capturing what people are frustrated with in LA. That is the crime, the homelessness, and all the other quality of life problems. Nithya Raman is actually the one that's contributing to it. She's not going to solve it. And so if you have two people up there that aren't going to solve it, you're literally just having to go with no alternative, the lesser of two evils. If you put up Karen Bass against a Spencer Pratt, you actually could have a flip happen. And the Democrats aren't going to let that happen. And unfortunately, I don't actually think there's a fix for this. So let me show you some of California election stuff that'll make your head blow up here. But the first one is, this is what, check out the forms of ID that California will take to allow you to register to vote for the first time. I mean, this is a joke. A gym membership card, an employer ID card. I mean, both of these can be had by illegals and non-citizens. A credit or a debit card. I mean, anyone can get a credit or a debit card. A prescription drug label. An insurance card. California provides health coverage to undocumented immigrants. This guy is actually a Republican, and he can't just say illegal alien. That's also funny. So understand this, like, it's open cheating. They will let anybody register to vote. But I do not think Utah's any different. I don't. I'm sorry. I know the Lieutenant Governor Henderson put out her fraudulent citizenship audit, but considering that she cheated in the 24 election, I don't think she has any credibility. In fact, I think I've said this on the show multiple times. She's a pathological liar. That woman is just a bad news all around. But on top of that, what you see here, we see similar stuff in Utah. And so when she put out her audit forms, I went through it in a show. You can poke holes through her audit without any problem at all, because she doesn't do a real audit. She's not trying to catch any fraud. Mr. Producer says a batch of thousands of ballots dropped in LA with 0 Spencer Pratt ballots. The odds of that are 0. Yeah, I've heard that too. I will say I also heard though that it did have some Spencer Pratt ballots in it, but he was in 3rd place, which I also don't think is credible. So there's multiple ways that they can cheat. And also, let's get to this next one, and you'll see how they cheat. I thought this was kind of amazing. So California actually allows people to essentially ballot harvest, and they put it under the guise of, oh, well, you can help somebody turn in their ballot for them, their mail ballot, of course, because I think anyone there can get a mail ballot. So let me show you this. Okay, so here's So this guy says, many have been asking me to describe the potential signature verification loophole for Los Angeles mail-in ballots. It says if a voter is unable to sign, the voter can make a mark witnessed by one person. So first of all, if you do a mail ballot and you don't even require the person to sign it, how are you verifying that the person to whom the ballot was sent is actually signing the ballot? There's no way to do that now, right? So in this case, what they do is they say, so here, this is an example. The person drew a happy face and witnessed it with a scribble. The scribble isn't validated as being a real person, no name, nothing. While a happy face may draw scrutiny, a plain line would not. This could hypothetically enable mass harvesting where the voter never fills out signs or even sees their own ballot. We should be told how many ballots show up without the voter's signature. So in this case, first of all, the voter is unable to sign, do you understand the amount of fraud that you are inviting right there? All they have to do is just mail out ballots and mail them out to certain locations, go grab them, and they just fill this out. Anybody can fill this out. Now, an additional problem here is that if you're going to allow this, which by the way, I don't think you should, but if you're going to allow it, you should be able to read the name of the person who witnessed it, right? So apparently the voter can just put whatever. So here they put a smiley face, allegedly. And then the person signing just signs it. Now they do have this printed name up here. So I don't know what that's about. But this isn't going to get you to election integrity, even if the person prints their name here, because you're not going to be able to go verify that information. If somebody cannot sign their own ballot, first of all, they should probably go in and vote. I'm sorry to say that, but that's really how this should work, because it raises even more questions. For example, how do you guarantee that they're not being pressured to vote a certain way by the person who now has the mail ballot? So for example, this is the issue with nursing homes. You could go through a nursing home, and there's stories of people doing this, and you can pressure the residents to vote a particular way. I've always thought that the clerk's offices should actually send staff to nursing homes and then help the people there vote under the assumption that the clerk's staff is nonpartisan and won't try to pressure people to do it one way or the other, that they'll actually be good and they'll help them just get their ballots in and make sure there's no pressuring going on, right? Because part of, I think, what we want to do is to protect people who are vulnerable to that type of activity. So for example, like if someone tried to pressure me to vote a particular way, good luck, it's not going to happen. But if you go through a nursing home, you can pressure people to vote a particular way. And so we have to do a better job of protecting them from that. And I think the way to do that is to have the clerk's offices actually go on a particular day, collect all the ballots there, and just help people vote. And I don't know why we don't do that. But in LA, and it's old, and by the way, this happens to elderly people and then spouses too. I know people who this happened to, where the wife will be like, like the husband wants to vote for Trump, and the wife's like, "You're not voting for Trump. I'm turning in your ballot for you." And but in the husband-wife case, I'm kind of like, well, if he's, functioning and he lets her do it, I just figure that's their relationship. So I'm not going to get involved. But on the elderly people, you can just see how this is open for abuse. And I suspect it's widespread. So this alone allows ballot harvesting, and it really just allows people, you can sign for anybody, and again, if you can't sign your name on here, you probably shouldn't be turning this kind of ballot. When my dad voted, because my parents actually live in San Diego, I went with him to turn in their ballots, and it was really funny because they will not take your ID from you. They're like, no, don't show us your ID. And I think my dad had to sign this little thing because he turned in my mom's ballot, and there's like a lady, she had on like a smock or an apron with like a thing in it to put the ballot, and she would check it as you put it in. But they're not checking your ID. They're not doing anything that would actually ensure security, and they're definitely not checking to make sure that people are citizens. So widespread fraud, But again, a lot of these are problems with mail voting in general, because the only way to be able to verify the identity of someone with mail voting in our system right now in Utah is signature verification. And so what you're doing when you do that is you are open to, actually, so you're giving discretion to the clerks, and the versus showing them a photo ID. So, for example, I vote in person because I don't like mail voting. The only time I've ever done is when I'm deployed. So when I'm here, I vote in person. I show them my ID. They'll check you in because you have to show a photo ID when you go to vote. Now, when you do that, there's no discretion. Either I match my photo is the photo on the ID, or they reject me. That's it. We're done. With mail voting, because it's signature verification, your signature varies over time. It can vary every time you sign it. I don't really sign my name that much manually, so it's always going to be different. And so you give the clerks a lot of discretion to decide how strict to be with signature verification. And in fact, the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we saw this, I think it was in 24, that the Lieutenant Governor's office actually came out with an evaluation of how signature verification was being done by Erin Davidson in Utah County. And she said it was too strict. So she actually puts pressure on the clerks to be lenient with signature verification, which means that Deidre Henderson is encouraging fraud of mail ballots. That's her goal. It's to do fraud. We've had some bills that would force you to go and turn your mail ballot in, which I actually think this is a good compromise. So let's say you want to turn it into a ballot drop box, you'd have to show your ID to someone there, and then you could turn in your mail ballot. I actually like that system better because I think it gives you that hybrid of the convenience that a lot of people seem to like, and then better security. Is it 100%? No. Is it an improvement? Yes, it's a big improvement. And so if you want to kind of take something that's, because I feel like we just have to keep on improving this, that would be the next step to take, is say, look, we'll mail you a ballot, but in order to turn it in, you have to show your photo ID. If you don't show your photo ID, we're not accepting your ballot. We're not doing signature verification anymore. And I think that'd be way better than the current system we have. But like I said, establishment of both parties likes to cheat, so I don't see anything changing anytime soon. Okay, next. We left off, well, maybe I'll come back to this. I wanted to talk about the America 250 thing, right? Celebration. But we'll come back to it because it's not necessarily necessary this second. Okay, we have elections, midterms coming up. I will say one of the things I'm worried about is inflation and how this is going to impact the midterms. I will just tell you right now, I think we go into this midterm with a better shot than maybe what I originally thought. And the reason is that of redistricting. So it sounds like there's fewer competitive seats, but I do think there's a risk here that because we are at war with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and I'm going to show you another thing in a second, that Iran has the ability to cause chaos close to the elections and cause oil prices and gas prices to spike even higher. I'm a little bit unclear at this point how much of an impact the Iran war and increase in gas prices and inflation is going to have on the election. I'll just say that I've noticed, as many of you know, I go grocery shopping a lot. I like to go to the grocery store. So like prices have started to increase again, and it's noticeable. And so I don't know if other people are noticing that, and if they are, will it impact how they vote in the fall? But here you can see this gives you a sense of how much prices have gone up just in 2026. So you see gas is up 40%, airline prices 21%, public transportation, I mean, I don't ever take that, but it's up. Let's see if we have a little bigger. There's some interesting ones in here. Let's see. Coffee, 5.3%. Coffee is expensive. I bought coffee this weekend, and it's like $6 for just like a regular, some coffee drink that probably used to be $3 or $4. Electricity is up 3%. Beef is up 3.2%, but I think it's probably higher because I've noticed steak prices are actually pretty high now. You've noticed fresh vegetables, 7.1%. This is not good. Okay, you can't really spin this to say, oh, it's okay. We're in a wartime. It's a wartime economy, blah, blah. People they're not going to buy that because this is going to cause them to struggle. I do have friends that think I'm stupid for even thinking this is an issue, that we got it in the bag. Midterms are totally good. I don't agree. I think one of the reasons I don't agree is that, let me show you this article. So this article says that there's a bunch of oil executives who warned the White House that the ongoing closure of the Strait of Hormuz is straining global oil inventories and could lead to gas price spikes in the coming weeks. Now, Trump, the administration denied that there have been these discussions, which I thought was kind of weird. But what I think is a bigger risk right now is that, if the oil prices kind of stay where they are, okay, that's one thing. But then you have to combine it with the fact that I read somewhere else that the stored inventories are collapsing in like the developed world. So, we have this petroleum reserve of stored oil that I think we're tapping into it. Japan is tapping into theirs. And so those reserves are beginning to drop to low levels. That increases the potential for a price shock, which is, if I'm an Iranian and I'm in Iran and I'm trying to fight the US, that's probably what I'm planning for. So you probably think, okay, let's just keep it calm for a little while here. And then as we kind of head closer to their midterms is when we start to cause chaos, which will cause oil prices to spike higher and then could flip the races, right? So just think about it this way, because in here they say, let me see, they say how much they think the prices could go up. 34. So far, I thought they said they thought it could go up 30 to 40%. And if you do that, maybe I read it somewhere else, but the prices, let's say there's a spike and prices go up another 30 to 40%, you're already at $4 a gallon. I think a little more than $4 a gallon is what I saw when I was driving around today in Utah. So let's say 4, just make math easy. And let's say it's another 40%, that's $5.60 a gallon. I'm sorry. I just don't think that people are going to be, excited to vote for Republicans if that's what it looks like. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's a real risk. And I'm just hoping that someone is thinking about that as they're thinking about where to go with this war. Personally, I just think we have to try to wrap this up. But I think what's unclear to me is what the strategic goal is and whether we've accomplished it or not. I have no idea. To me, it sounded like it might have been regime change. I know it has something to do with making sure they don't get a nuclear weapon, but I don't know how you go through now and try to figure out where all the nuclear material is, because I am 100% sure that the Iranians probably dispersed it all over the country. And I'm not really sure that you want to send US troops into Iran and trying to find these things. It would be like trying to find the Horcruxes in the Harry Potter movies, right? Like, who knows where they hid them? Who knows what they look like? Who knows if we have accurate intelligence, and who knows if that's even worth the risk. So when you think about it that way, I don't know where this goes, but I feel like from our perspective in the US, it's better for us to get this thing resolved and to pull our troops back so that we're not having these risks happening as we head into the midterms. Like, I'd like to see gas prices go down, because I actually think Trump's economy, there seem to be mixed signals on the whole thing, weaknesses and strengths, but certainly before the war, I think he was kind of beginning to head in the right direction based on the tax cuts he did and kind of the regulatory reforms that are going on. But I think this war puts a lot of that at risk, especially as inflation starts to pop. I saw another article that talked about how gas prices, is it gas prices? No, I'm sorry, that income is not rising as fast as inflation anymore. So it means people are getting poorer. And that's the problem with inflation generally, is it's an invisible tax. It makes you poorer. And I don't think that works. Now, Mr. Producer says the jobs report was almost triple the expectations. Right, exactly. There's some good signs. I will say that the vast majority of the jobs, though, were in hospitality and restaurants. So I don't know what that means, except I don't think it means they were high-paying jobs. So, but it's something. I'm not. I like to try to be as half glass full as possible on this stuff, because you want the economy has to start picking up in order for it to benefit normal Americans, especially if we're not doing mass deportations anymore, which we're not. So, I just I hope someone is thinking about the impact on elections and whether it's worth it. I don't think it's worth losing the elections for Iran, and this is why. Because if the Democrats come into power, they will. I honestly think if they win 2026 in any sort of decisive way, they're likely to win 2028. And if they win the 2028 presidency, they will reopen the borders, they will legalize all the illegals, and the country will be done. There's really no turning back. And the reason the country will be done is because the Republicans did not make any sort of structural or transformational reforms that would allow us to protect ourselves from what's coming. And so, I was listening to this other show, a little bit of it by this guy, Daniel Horowitz, and he said that if he could get one reform, it would be to allow states to deport illegals and to control immigration at their level. So it would be kind of like there'd be two pieces to this. One is you have the federal immigration laws. So they have H-1Bs, they have, they let in chain migration every year. They do, obviously they let in tons of illegals, whatever they're going to do. But then the states get to decide if they want to actually allow them into their state. So in that type of a scenario, Utah could theoretically say no H-1Bs in the state, no illegals in the state. Now, obviously that wouldn't happen because, again, like what I talked about earlier, that the pressure to allow them to come here comes from big dollar donors. Typically in Utah, it's the construction industry and the tech industry. And they're also backed up by religious groups like the LDS Church that wants that open borders, constant flow of people to come in. So I don't think it would happen here, but there are states where it could happen. So you might see like a more conservative red state actually say, you know what, we don't want all these people here. We're not going to give them welfare. We don't want H-1B visas. We don't want H-2A visas. We don't want H-2C visa. That's a new one that they want to create to import working class work, like non-college educated people to fill construction jobs. We don't want any of that stuff. And they could be like a haven for actual real Americans instead of foreigners. So anyway, like that's kind of, I like that. I like that a lot. But that's my fear, is that if we lose this election, it's done. There's really nothing else to do at that point. So it would have been a good 250 years, but you legalize all the illegals that are here. There's 40 to 50 million, and it's done. There's no going back. It's just done. I can't emphasize it enough. There's no country left. So I might just go somewhere nice and quiet and just be done with even trying to fix anything, because it's not worth it. Let's talk Pride. So this Saturday they had the Pride Parade in Salt Lake City. I don't know. Did anyone go? Oh, Caroline Teaches Math says they will absolutely reopen the borders to get votes and seats. Yeah, totally, they will. What's crazy is they already cheated with the 2020 census. It's actually more basic than what President Trump said. At the time, I remember reading about how they were playing games with the numbers. So New York should have lost another seat, but they were doing stuff at the edge to move the numbers around. I actually think Trump could have just like come in and just redid the numbers based on the 2020 census, and then redistributed the seats again, and then allowed a challenge to happen. But shoulda, coulda, woulda. They didn't do it. So what are you gonna do with that? Let's talk about Pride in Salt Lake City. I did not go because I never do. I have other things going on in my life, but I did see that So let's look at some of the sights from it. I did hear about it. I have some friends that went. I mean, this is all fine, right? I will say down here, I will say I do love. I mean, look at her lipstick. Think about how much time it took her to do that. Props to her. Props to her. This is the one. Oh, they had furries. This is what Cass told me Cass went, and he said that there were furries at the parade. I was like, what? They're furries? Yeah, furries. There you go. So apparently they had a float in the parade. So of course we have to showcase freaks. Then another one in here that was interesting. Let me see where I had this. Give me 1 second. Oh, here, is it the Cougar Chronicle? They did a good job of documenting this, but let me show you what they had. Okay, here we'll go through their X thing because they did a pretty good job. So they had a youth zone, which I mean, you know, these. I don't know what was in this youth zone, but like, come on. I guess if this, you know, I think there's some questions here about what is appropriate in why you would even have a youth zone. I don't know, but it just seems weird to me. Here's Nate Bluen wearing his Pride outfit, I guess. I think this is his wife actually right next to him. I mean, that's a lot. But I think if I were him, I would have worn maybe a less tight shirt. I don't think that works. And maybe not all the designy stuff for it. And then let's go to the Cougar Chronicle. So let's go to their Twitter, because they had a photo from it that reminded me of when I went. And I went, this was in 2022. I had a booth at the Pride Festival because I was running for county clerk, right? Okay, so I was running for county clerk. So I was in the parade and I had a booth at the Pride Festival, you know, because I'm a gay candidate. It was a good way to do outreach to people. I had never been to the Pride stuff here before that. Fidelity. Oh, I forgot they called it Fidelity Month. Oh yeah. We'll pull that up in a minute. I told you, it's a good point. Disagree Butter just pointed that out. Caroline Teaches Math says, I did not go to Pride because I didn't want to see dogs. Yeah. So, okay. So this is gross, right? I mean, they're giving out little toys in the shape of sperm. Like, come on. This is my point. Because look, I don't even think, I have to be honest, I don't actually think this stuff is appropriate for children generally. But the reality is that people do bring their kids there. And so it is really imperative on the people who organize this to make sure that everything is family friendly at that point. And because of the fact that there are children that are showing up, and you really don't want to send the wrong message to children about what's going on or do things that are not appropriate in front of children. This is not appropriate. Okay, like these should not have been given out because, again, there are kids. I certainly hope these are not being thrown off of a float at the parade or something. And I'll just say, like, when I went, we gave out stickers and we had frisbees, which people love frisbees. You know, you can throw them into the crowd and stuff. And I remember we took some photos, and one of my people advising me was like, do not post any photos of children where you can see their faces on the Pride Parade route. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we don't have permission. But then later on, I had photos from a different parade where you could see kids getting like frisbees and stuff. And he was fine with those photos. And he told me, he's like, the reason why I said don't post any photos of kids that are at the Pride Parade route is because people will think it's grooming, which, I mean, maybe it is, probably by the parents for bringing them there. But, you know, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. I can see that, you know. I guess I understand why people would be concerned about it, although it was not me bringing children there. The parents brought their children there. So to be clear, I didn't do anything inappropriate. Everybody was fully clothed. We gave out frisbees and stickers. So we'll never do anything inappropriate like that. Ugh. Okay, so then they showed all this other stuff. They had anti-Christian mockery. I mean, this is kind of typical stuff. What you'll never see is anti-Islamic mockery at the Pride stuff. Okay, just know that. I don't like stuff like this. Be gay, reject God. Like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. No, nope. Then they've got this stuff. I mean, you know, so whatever. The sticker is, I guess it's kind of, if it, you know, I think this is supposed to be funny. Work harder, millions on welfare are depending on you. I believe it's supposed to be funny, except it just it's so hurtful because it's so true, right? You know, like this is exactly what they're telling us. Work harder, and they should actually just add on here, millions of illegals on welfare are depending on you. This is where it got messed up. So, I thought these guys had it up. This cougar, let me see. I guess not. So the Satanic Temple. Oh, here it is. Okay, the Satanic Temple. So in 2022, when I had a booth there, the Satanic Temple was there, and they were doing unbaptisms on people. And I found out about it because some person came to my booth and they had like blood across their forehead, you know, like fake blood. And I was like, what is that? And the guy was like, oh, I just got unbaptized by the Satanic Temple. And I remember being like, why would you, like, if you're the Pride organizers, why would you allow the Satanic Temple to set up something there? Why didn't you just say no? No, we don't want you here. But because I think this actually just makes everybody look bad. And it actually feeds into the stereotypes they have of gays, right? Like that we're all pro Satan or something. So I gotta say, like, maybe it's just bad. They're not good at PR, like not at all. All right, then I got one more for you on this. Cass took this, so let me pull it there. And this will go to my point earlier that that they'll never make fun of Allah, but they will make fun of Jesus. So here you go. Yeah, Jesus. In the parade, I believe. Take it for what it's worth. Okay, if you want to call in today, you can call in anytime. We had a phone number change, so it's 435-900-8595. It's unfortunate. I can't, Mr. Producer, I don't remember the number anymore. I used to remember the old one. Okay. Anyway, feel free to call in anytime. Now, Disagree Butter mentioned Fidelity Month. Let's see if I can find a post about it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Governor Cox. You know, he's preparing to run for Congress. For president. He's going to run for the presidency, right? I assume that people have come to that conclusion. They saw he released a book. I doubt anyone will read his book because I assume, unless it has something about how he's pro the trans agenda in it, or you know, something. I need something like really worth making it read. That's going to be needs to disclose something I already don't know about him. And so far, I have nothing in it seems to indicate that. Where is his Fidelity Month declaration? Let's see. Okay, Fidelity Month. I can't believe I forgot about this. I'm so embarrassed. There we go. Oh, Alexis Ants actually posted about it. So here's what he wrote. So, you know, traditionally people would declare it Pride Month. And he said, whereas a recent opinion poll of Americans showed that support for traditional values has significantly declined, whereas a majority of Americans no longer esteem values like faith, family, patriotism, or community involvement. Do you think that's true? That it's a majority of Americans? I don't know about that. Whereas fidelity means dedication to faith, family, and country. Whereas it is imperative that we recommit ourselves to the pursuit of fidelity. Whereas John Adams, okay, so Here's the thing. I don't think Governor Cox would have been a founding father if he was alive at the time. I think he would have been a loyalist, right? Marsgate says, I lost respect for Pride stuff because they always seem to slide into heathen behaviors on the street. Yeah, and I agree with you. That's like the problem. And Utah actually has one of the cleaner ones because I actually think the people that organize it are aware of how Utahns respond to it. And so they do try to control it. I still think we saw some of the stuff, right? They're not 100% understanding where people are. So, for example, I would not have a satanic temple booth at the Pride Festival. Why would you do that? That's stupid. I wouldn't have a youth zone at the Pride Festival. I don't know what that means, and I think it's weird. I wouldn't be giving out toys shaped like sperm or toys shaped like dildos or whatever else they were giving out. Like, you need to be very clean and appropriate in a place like Utah. And I don't know that they have quite gotten there yet. So John Adams, as I said, Governor Cox would have been a loyalist. He would have tried to keep us part of the British Empire. So he says, John Adams, a founding father of the United States, said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Okay. Like, this guy cheated to get into office. I can't. It's like too much. It's too much. Okay. Like, if you're going to cheat to get into office, you don't have to get to then go and make quotations like this because you don't believe them. You clearly don't believe them. Because, if you actually believed in what the founding fathers stood for, when you didn't collect the signatures, you would have just not put your name onto the ballot for the primary and just been graceful about it and lost the election like you deserve to do. But you didn't do that. You cheated. I can't deal with this, man. Okay, whereas the survival of the United States, oh man. Okay, it depends on cheaters like Governor Cox, right? The survival of the United States depends on the shared bonds of faith, family, and patriotism. Whereas it is fitting to observe 1 month each year to rededicate the United States to its core values. Now, therefore, I, Spencer J. Cox, Governor of the great state of Utah, do hereby declare June 2026 as Fidelity Month in Utah. That's lame. This is so stupid. This guy's going to run for president and he's just going to crash and burn because the whole act only works in Utah. Everybody else is going to think that he's a homo and they're not going to like his demeanor either because he's nasty. He can't control himself. He's always like having outbursts at people because they disagree with him. And then, he runs a Disagree Better campaign, but he really needs to just run it for himself. He's the problem. It's not anyone else. Like, I don't have a problem disagreeing better with people. In fact, I can work with people who disagree with me on everything except the one issue we agree on. I don't have a problem with that. He does. He can't actually stand any sort of dissent at all. He goes after people that actually dissent or that are active in politics and conservative. He's got the parties doing it now. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if the Salt Lake County GOP, the entire movement to kind of get rid of conservatives out of leadership positions, is being pushed by Governor Cox. Now, I don't know that that's actually true, but it just feels like all these people do is target conservatives and try to get us out of office. So whatever. But anyway, on that Fidelity Month point, so maybe I did have this in here. I didn't think about it. Give me a sec. This is Jennifer Plum, most famous for transing her son. In case you were wondering. Okay, let me pull this up for you so you can listen to her. She's also Mike McKell's best friend. He loves.
Acknowledged or celebrated by that proclamation. It's the optics and the timing that just I can't get okay with.
State Senator Jen Plum said June is widely celebrated as Pride Month. And she views this declaration as an attempt to replace that.
I really do think that when you were speaking of those things, those are perfect July that would fit right in with the celebrations that we're already having with July 4th and with our coming up of our 250th anniversary celebrations. I have no problem with any of the principles that are being acknowledged or celebrated by that proclamation.
Right. That woman is evil. Okay, she transed her son. She probably took him to the youth zone at the Pride Festival so she could groom him into wanting to become a girl, and then she trans him into a girl. And so when you bring it up, she actually gets upset. But what you should notice is that Governor Cox's brother-in-law, Governor Cox, is very pro the trans agenda. I posted, I or someone else, maybe I gave it to somebody, shared it with people, that his son, Cox's son, gave an interview with Papa Osler, Richard Osler. And he talks all about how his parents were very into the trans agenda, how they would tell them how they should love trans people and all people, and be pro-pride and all this kind of stuff. And so Mike McKell, who is the governor's brother-in-law, works with Senator Jennifer Plum all the time on legislation. And really, Plum's main accomplishment, if you want to call it that, is that she transed her poor son. I mean, I don't know how anyone takes this woman seriously. If you meet her in person, by the way, she looks nuts. I went to a hearing once. It was something, I might have been about the locker rooms or something, and I was with Candace Duncan. She's the one that exposed that men were being allowed to use women's locker rooms in Salt Lake County. Like, and when I say she exposed it, because a man was in the locker room when she was there after she took a shower after swimming. And I remember Senator Plum walked by us, and Candace turned to me and was like, "Oh my God, she looks nuts." And I was like, "I know." I'm gonna watch out for that one. Okay, and then let me say, I have one other thing here, maybe on Pride weekend. Let's see what we got here. So give me one sec. Oh, we already talked about this. It was the unfortunate toy. And then I guess there was a fight. So I was hoping for more entertainment in this fight, but honestly, it's not very entertaining. So, but let's take a look. All right, so you can see they're fighting. There's a security guard. You see the security guard there? There's some guy, I don't know what that guy's doing. And then if you look, so this is like a few minutes later, the security guard, one of them is in a headlock right over here. And then this one is too, I think, by a woman. I don't think this was going very well for those security guards. So who knows what happened. I wasn't able to get a lot of news on that one. Okay, so there's our Pride report. I haven't seen a lot about it besides what I showed you. If there's more, we'll talk about it in the future. And hopefully, I feel like there's I know a lot of gay people that don't really bother with this and don't go because they don't associate with it anymore. They don't feel like it represents them. To Marsgate's point, it's not really. It's more about the TQ plus, so the trans, these people that think they're queer or whatever, and all of these different freaks. It's a freak show. It's not just the normal gay guy that's like, or woman. It's like, I don't need anything special. Just leave me alone. That's it. Like, I don't need you to teach about it in school. I don't need you to give special books to kids. I don't need you to wear rainbows. I don't need you to come to my house and tell me that you support me. Just let me live my life, and that's it. And be a part of the community. And that's all I think most people want. And they've, this kind of newer TQ plus part of the community has turned it into a big freak show where everybody has to agree on the lifestyle and you have to be a part of it and you have to know the details about it. I just think it's weird. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is the Department of War stuff. I thought this was really interesting. And so let me post. Here's what happened. So they had put out this list of let me see what it's called, an abbreviated list of religions that are recognized by the Department of War, right? And they amended the list. So this says, last week a proposed list of simplified faith codes was released to the media. The Pentagon list included redundant and unnecessary labeling, and the mistake has been fixed. The goal of this effort is to simplify a previously out-of-control belief coding system that had ballooned to over 200 codes. So they were recognizing all sorts of faiths that I don't think they needed to. And so in order to clarify the work of chaplains and simplify the work of commanders, the Pentagon has consolidated and simplified the list to roughly 30 codes using the previously used labels for faiths. So this is, I think, the key. And I knew this from the beginning. So this blew up into a big controversy this weekend, but I've served, and I know that the Pentagon's not making distinctions about what religion is Christian and what's not. I don't even think that was the intention of the original list. But here they say, the Pentagon's job is not to adjudicate theological debates, but instead to ensure sincerely held faith is respected and encouraged in our ranks. So, that I think is the key point. I don't think anything that happened this weekend was nefarious or bad faith on the part of the Pentagon. And I think it's been a misunderstanding. So let me show you what I mean. Maybe I don't. Oh, here. Okay. Maybe is this the original? Well, someone else posted. Okay. So I don't have the original thing, but this is what an LDS member of someone who served actually said about it. So here's what I think it was about. They had labeled a bunch of Christian denominations as Christian. So they said Christian Episcopalian, Christian Catholic. And then they had the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it did not say Christian first. But I actually thought that the Christian piece was to say that a chaplain who is Christian could minister to any of those faiths that were labeled as Christian. But we would also need to have LDS chaplains as well, right? So because the LDS faith has an additional book, right? The Book of Mormon. So that's all I think that was about. I don't actually think that was saying, but to just take it a little further, like you wouldn't necessarily need to have an Episcopalian chaplain at all. You wouldn't necessarily need to have a Presbyterian chaplain at all, but you definitely need to have LDS chaplains in the military to make sure that you're able to provide services to LDS members, at least some LDS chaplains in the chaplain corps. In the same way that you would need to have, I think you need to have some imams, or I don't know, like whatever they call them, Islamic imams in the chaplain corps to serve your Muslim members. That's what I think that was about. I don't think it was something nefarious, and maybe it was just put out in a weird way, but I don't think they were saying that the LDS faith is not Christian. People can have that argument. I'm not taking sides on it. But I'm just saying that I don't think that's what the Department of War would ever say, because again, like they have service members that are all these different faiths. They're not trying to offend anybody. So I thought it was a very interesting debate because it was like a lot of the people having the debate were taking something out of context and trying to put words into the Department of War's mouth that I don't think the Department of War would ever want to do, because again, they're not trying to offend their own soldiers. But maybe there's a broader debate being had out there. But again, I don't think that involves the Department of War. And here's I was looking, and this is what I thought this was interesting. This is what Pete Hegseth said a few months ago around Christmas when he announced that they were going to be doing this. So I'll just play a part of it that I thought was relevant. Here. Okay, here.
Chaplains are chaplains, not emotional support officers, and we're going to treat them as such. That's why today at My Direction, we are also simplifying the faith and belief coding system. In recent years, it ballooned to over 200 overly complex.
This almost looks like AI, but it is not.
Faith and belief codes. An overwhelming majority of the military population only uses 6 codes. 11 are not used by anyone. So we're going to streamline it and move it to a new list of religious affiliation codes so that our chaplains can actually use it to minister better to the flock. More reforms will be coming in the days and weeks ahead. There will be a top-down cultural shift, putting spiritual well-being on the same footing as mental and physical health, as a first step toward creating a supportive environment for our warriors and their souls. We're going to restore the esteemed position of chaplains as moral anchors for our fighting force. The 1956 Army Chaplains Manual states, quote, "The chaplain is the pastor and the shepherd of the souls entrusted to his care," end quote. This is a high and sacred calling. But this only works if our shepherds are actually given the freedom to boldly guide and care for their flock. Stay tuned for more. We are going to make the Chaplain Corps great again.
So I guess that's my point. I think this was all intended to improve the services that chaplains are able to provide to soldiers and to ensure that for all of the major faiths that are represented in among your service members, that you actually have chaplains that are trained and a part of that faith. And that's all I think that was. I really don't think there's any negative. I will just say that I do think that Mike Lee could have just called Pete Hegseth over the weekend and tried to figure out what happened. It was odd to me that this got blown up into a bigger thing when it probably could have been a quick phone call, and he probably just told us, "Oh, hey, this was just not. It's not what it looks like," and they'll communicate again on Monday. Problem solved. But maybe there's something political that I don't fully understand about it. So. Okay, next we're going to talk about data centers. So I think the data center issue is not going away, and it's actually a much bigger issue than what people realize. So I want to start by talking about this weekend, or maybe it was last week. I saw that there were people floating this idea, including President Trump, of the government buying or being given ownership interest in AI companies. Okay, and Sam Altman, by the way, is one of the people pushing this. Here's an article about it. And I want to add, just so you understand, that the data center issue is something where you have a uniparty pushing it. So it is both Democrats and Republicans, the establishment ones. So if you notice, this is Gretchen Whitmer. I like to call her the Wicked Witch of the Midwest. And so she is pro data center in Michigan. And of course, in Utah, you have all these elected Republicans who are also pro data center. It just happens we're a red state, but the places that they're pushing them are rural areas. I think there's land. They want the land and the water, and then they also think that the elected officials there are more easily persuaded than when you get into urban areas. Because, just for example, in Michigan, they could go into Detroit. There's tons of empty buildings and just build data centers there. They don't do that. And Detroit's on the water. So it's not even like you'd have a water issue. But that's not the goal. The goal isn't to do it in a way that would be the least disruptive to people. It's actually to just do it however you want to do it. So here, speaking to reporters on Air Force One, let's see here. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One on Friday, Trump described a potential partnership where the American people can benefit from the successes of AI, and said executives from leading AI companies will visit the White House probably next week to discuss the idea. There's something very interesting about it where it almost becomes a partnership with the American public, Trump, a Republican, said Friday. When reporters noted to Trump that Sanders, a self-proclaimed Democratic socialist, had proposed public ownership in AI companies, he pointed to similarities in their coalitions. The economic views of Trump supporters and voters who supported Sanders for president, Trump said, aren't that far apart. Now, my problem with this entire idea is that if the government owns a part of AI companies, then they now have a vested interest in making sure that those companies are successful. That'll have a couple impacts. One is, as they develop regulations, they will develop regulations that benefit the companies that they own. It's called regulatory capture, and it's already there. Anthropic, for example, is very openly trying to do that. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but actually through Celeste Malloy is an example of a person that they're supporting to be able to design regulations that benefit them specifically. The other piece is it then gives the government a vested interest in running over local opposition to their to data centers, for example. or any other facilities or any other laws that the public is opposed to. So for example, the Box Elder data center, if let's say Anthropic comes in and the government owns a part of it and they say, we need this data center, and locals are like, we don't want the data center, the government could come up and say like, well, too bad, you're having the data center because we need these companies to do well. We now have a sorry, hold on, give me one sec. All right, we now have a vested interest in make sure these companies are successful. So you can see how this is a problem, right? Now also, we're now on the hook if these companies go out of business, and we should have no interest in whether they're successful or not, because again, that's not the role of government. And also then we might have to bail them out. This is really, a lot of people are saying this is a bailout already. So these AI companies have made commitments that they can't actually fund. And so now they're looking for government money to be able to fund them. I don't want to be a part of this, right? Like if your product is so great, you need to develop it with your own money, not with taxpayer money. And that's how this should work. Like, I'm not looking for a socialist economy. We already have one, but like, I'm not looking to do like a European style where they have these like state-run companies. Nothing good comes of that. So that's one thing we need to watch out for. So let me see here. The next thing I've got. Oh, so here, Brian Malahy actually did a piece last week, or I should say KUTV News, but Malahy actually had told me about it. And it's about data centers. So let's pull this up. And this is about, Brian actually interviews people in Millard County, because there were data centers that were approved down there. We actually talked about it on the show, so we were a little ahead of the curve. I'm very proud of that. Let's see if I can get this to come up though, because it is taking a long time. Okay, hold on. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's see here. I think I'm not sure if there'll be an ad, so give me a second. Oh, yeah.
An opponent of data centers there is frustrated by scant attention and what she says is a lack of transparency. We're following a pair of data centers tonight for you. Samantha Hoffman is in southern Utah with details on a planned vote for the data center there. Brian Malahy up first, though, in central Utah with reaction from people who call this area home. Brian.
The Stratos project in Box Elder County became a national, even international story. Some think the data centers planned here in Millard County have barely registered.
Box Elder had a very famous name backing the project.
Amanda Fahey of Fillmore thinks celebrity drove the Stratos story and galvanized the backlash, and absent celebrity here.
We know about it just from newspaper announcements and being able to attend a meeting Tuesday mornings.
Is it frustrating to you that there isn't more attention being paid to Millard County?
Absolutely. It feels that there's just a few of us that are screaming into the void.
Concerns familiar: water, power, air quality impacts, and in Millard, no environmental studies. Has this been transparent enough?
8 public hearings? I don't know, you tell me.
Commissioner Bill Wright and his colleagues approved the data centers. One could have more than 30 buildings.
I don't care whether they come or not.
Really?
I'm not pushing data centers. The reason they're here is they have a property right and they get to exercise that property right.
The jewel.
This is what they always say, right? This is the latest thing. Oh, they have a property right. Now there's that, like, they changed the zoning rules to allow these data centers to be built in Millard County. They didn't have a property right to change the zoning rules. So you actually are giving them something in order to allow the data center to be built. And I also they put all sorts of restrictions on people all the time. The only ones that seem to not have to, where they always go away, is for when the elected officials want some economic development, then they're willing to give them up. So like, I can only have 6 hens on my property, right? It's not like I have a right to have 12 hens if I want, or a rooster. The city has placed these restrictions on homes here. So they are allowed to place restrictions on property. you don't have just this unfettered right to do whatever you want with your property.
And Creekstone data center projects here in Millard County could spend tens of billions of dollars over the next couple of decades. In Millard County, Brian Malahy, KUTV2 News.
Okay. There's more in that piece. They did a good job. But I thought that was interesting because, like I said, we did cover this data center in a previous show because I had seen the news about it. And let me just tell you what they said. So, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Before we go further, I just want to say I think generally elected Republicans in the state are completely missing the boat on the data center issue. They are generally pro data center, and I've actually heard some of them say that. It's like when people were pro mask wearing or pro taking the COVID vaccination. It's weird to say that. And I think it's actually it sounds a little bit like religious dogma. Yeah, like as an elected official, you actually should not be pro any particular industry. You should be pro creating an environment that is, I think, business friendly, meaning it's liberty based. So lower taxes really on everybody, because you need lower individual income taxes too, because small businesses tend to do pass-through entities and then report the taxes on their personal tax returns. So you want lower taxes, a stable regulatory environment, and really the stable regulatory environment in a lot of ways is more important than the lower taxes. If you notice, big companies a lot of times will stay in blue states with high taxes, and they'll do it because they have regulatory capture, and so they're able to control the regulatory environment. It's more than just taxes. But for small businesses, I think you want lower taxes. And then I really think you should stop giving incentives and stop worrying about what kind of attracting specific types of businesses. Because honestly, in Millard County, a building that's going to have, 30 or a data center with 30 buildings in it, there are not the people there to be able to build these things. And they're going to import people into your county. If you know anything about construction in this state, it's dominated by illegal aliens. They'll probably build man camps in Millard County, and that'll totally change your county forever. So, maybe people there want that. I don't know. I tend to think people really though want to be able to preserve their way of life. They're not looking for rapid growth. They're looking to be able to have an affordable standard of living, and they're looking for one where their children can come back so that there's enough jobs so that their children in a good enough business environment that their children can come back and also be able to stay there and make a living. And I talked about this in a show where, you go to rural communities a lot of times, the farmers and the ranchers, instead of hiring Americans that live there in the towns, they actually hire illegal aliens, and then they also import people on H-2A visas. They pay them slave labor. I think we talked about this, but Carson Jorgensen, he owns a sheep ranch. What is it? In Juab County. And he talked about how he can't find Americans to work for him. And when we dug into it, he pays them $3,241 a month, and I think it's 42 cents to work 24/7 and to go and basically sleep with the sheep. His response to me was, well, we also provide them with food and a free cell phone. So $100 a month. So, that's like not enough. Obviously an American's not going to do that because that doesn't sound fun. And if you enjoy that, you're not going to be able to make a living doing it. Like you cannot, I mean, that's like, let's say it's less than $40,000 a year. You're not going to be able to buy a house. Probably won't. I don't know what you can afford on that salary. You definitely can't buy a house. You're definitely not going to be able to get married. You're definitely not going to have kids. And so then I think what's the value of that business if they're not able to actually function without importing a bunch of cheap labor? Does it actually benefit us? Do I care if your business goes under? I actually, honestly, I don't. I just feel like we need businesses. And I don't think it's all sheep ranchers, by the way. I think it's Carson and people like him. And what they do is they do a race to the bottom because they're getting all this cheap labor. They're not hiring Americans. They're not paying livable wages or competitive wages or market wages, because we don't even know what the market wages are at this point, because there's so many immigrants that have come in and they're constantly coming in and they're suppressing wages across the board. So I don't know what a market wage looks like. The only way we would know that is if we shut the immigration system down, deport all the illegals and the temporary workers too. Like, I want the H-1Bs out of here. Then you'll be able to see what real wages need to be in a competitive manner with just Americans competing for the jobs. But, you know, that'll never happen because I guess nobody wants that or something. I don't know what it is. Like, do Americans want that or not? I don't know, because I feel like in Utah, I don't know if they do, to be honest with you, because I think so many Utahns think, I hear this all the time, what makes our country great is immigration. I was like, really? Is that what makes our country great? I think what makes our country great are Americans. It's the things that we do. We do like amazing feats. You would think you would celebrate those things and you'd want more of that. And I don't, you know, you could be pro some immigration, but why would you be pro open borders? And do you even care about your kids? You know, like I talk to people all the time and they don't seem to care if their children are able, they care that their children can afford anything, but, and to afford to move back. So like where I live, that's a big issue, right? So if you have 5 kids and you live in Riverton and the homes here are like $600,000 to $800,000, you're probably thinking like, well, I have these children. Will they be able to move back? I don't know. So then you're thinking, I would think you then take that to the next level and think, okay, well, so like, how would they be able to afford a home? And considering that my children are all over the place, right? Like they may not all have the same aptitude and the same intelligence or the same desires. They may have different ones. Like some of them might feel like, I want to go and I want to be a mechanic, right? And nothing wrong with that, but maybe they make less money. One wants to be a lawyer, one wants to be a doctor. Like you've got kind of that variety. Well, you have to plan for all of those possibilities and what that looks like in terms of their ability to move back. And their ability to make a living is now dependent on who they're competing with and what types of, you know, like what types of wage suppression is going on. Well, the mechanic isn't going to be able to make that much money because again, it's full of illegal aliens. So now that person's at a disadvantage. The lawyer will be fine because you can't be an illegal, be a lawyer. The doctor will be fine because you can't be a doctor, I think, as an illegal. But then anyone and if they're in the tech industry, they're not going to be fine because it could be replaced by an H-1B import. If they're in any working class industry that doesn't require a college degree, they're going to be competing against illegals. So how do you expect them to make a living? I guess I don't understand. Marsgate says they grease up the process for data and then restrict us as fast as they can type in tax. Yeah, no, I think that's right. They are. I actually think. Look, I think data centers, we don't actually need them for AI. I don't think they have anything to do with AI, to be honest with you. I think what they're about is, and I want to make it clear, I was listening to a podcast and this woman made a distinction between data centers that have been around for a long time. So like your hospital will have a data center in it. You know, they'll have their servers. Business would have some sort of data center that they're depending on. Maybe it's with Amazon. That is a little bit different than the hyperscale ones that they're building now. I think these are about surveillance. And the way I'm thinking about it is like, let's say you have a camera on your house. It can store data for a particular amount of time because of the space you have, right? I think what the hyperscale data centers do is now they make that you can store data unlimited. And now you've got way more data, a lot more data sets. You get to learn a lot more about how people operate, individuals, by the way. And then you can start studying how they think, what they do. During COVID, you saw this where they were manipulating the algorithms. So Google still does it. Well, I assume they all do actually, but Google was doing it explicitly, right? They do it during elections all the time, where if you type something in, they'll try to direct you towards the information that helps the Democrats. Well, think about that now with AI, where they can actually, because they understand how your brains work. And so what they'll do is they'll take that information and they'll start changing your algorithms in social media and things like that to change how you think and to move you to the left and to Democrats. That's always the goal of these companies. Okay, like they all hate us. They hate American values, and they want to move us to the left and have us dominated by Democrats. So everything they do will push us in that direction. But that's what I think the data centers are about. They're about surveillance. And I think this is a critical issue as well in races throughout the state right now. So just for example, like Box Elder County, 2 of the 3 commissioners. Oh, our Mr. Producer says, I believe, sorry, my dog. I believe I mentioned this before. Within 6 to 8 years, all data centers will be in space. Oh, that's what I said. Oh, is this Elon Musk? I will say Elon Musk says stuff, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but he does seem to do it. So maybe that's true. Maybe they'll be in space. That'd be better than having them here. Although, who knows? It'll probably ruin space too. So, okay. Let me keep going here. We had... okay. So I think this is a big issue in Utah's elections. Right now, 2 of the 3 Box Elder County commissioners... My dogs, I don't know what they're barking at. The 2 of the 3 Box Elder County commissioners are up for election, and they have Republican primary opponents. So if you're unhappy with their decision on the data centers, now's your chance to vote them out. And I think there's some news that broke this weekend that the Democrats are actually funding flyers opposing them. And I would just like to say thank you to them, because what I've seen, if you look at elections happening throughout the country, is that people that vote for data centers are getting tossed from office by voters. And so I would rather have them thrown out. And then even if the Democrats want to fund it, I'm good with it. And I will just say, thank you very much. Please do. And have them thrown out in a Republican primary, then put these seats at risk of a Democrat taking them. Now, I will say, I don't think that there's Democrat opposition in either of those races. At least I didn't see anything, but I might not have been looking at their website, right? So I'm not sure. If there's not, you don't have that risk right now, but you will have it the next cycle, because the Democrats are not stupid. Okay, like they may be crazy, but they are not stupid, and they will target those seats. And they'll focus on the issues that matter to do it, because again, those guys understand strategy. The guy who ran those flyers is very smart. Okay? He knows what he's doing. So that's what I would say to you. Better we throw them out in the primary than have the Republican thrown out in a general election. Oh, I see some dogs are walking by. So that'd be one point. Then the second one is you have Stuart Adams. Okay, he's in a primary. You can toss him. So that takes care of that seat. And that would be a good thing. And then you have Celeste Malloy. Now, this is what I thought was really interesting. This weekend, I was, doing some research. Someone told me that she's been getting a lot of that they got a lot of flyers from Celeste. So I said, hey, can you send me pictures of the flyers? I want to see who's sending them. Now, she's sending some of them from her campaign. I think it's costing about $50,000 per flyer. But then I found that some of them were sent by a PAC called Defending Our Values. And so the Defending Our Values is actually funded by Anthropic through something called Public First Action, which I think Public First Action is a 50c4 that's actually run by a Democrat and Chris Stewart. So the former Republican representative that Celeste replaced. Interesting, right? So let me show you here. Phil posted about it. So let's look at Phil's thing. Truth Salute says, that's why Spencer Cox supports data centers. He's trying to push the state left. Oh, you know it. They all are. Okay, so he said, why did Celeste Malloy refuse to take the side of Utah residents against AI data centers at Monday's debate? Rather than standing with Utah residents, Celeste repeated what she's been saying over and over throughout this campaign. Utah is great for data centers. Now we know why. The Anthropic-backed super PAC called Defending Our Values dropped $837,452 in TV, digital, and mail ads supporting Celeste in the 5 days before our debate earlier this week. So that's a huge amount of money, okay? $900,000. here's kind of a chart about it, and you can see they're spending about 180,000 on digital, over 500 on TV, 42,000 on mailers, and then these give you the dates too. But man, that's a lot of money, right? That's more money I think that was spent in the last primary race with Celeste. Okay, so then I found this, and I think this is interesting. It's called NoBigAI.money, and I want to share this so that people, you can go on here and do some research. Someone is tracking the AI money that is being spent, right? So you can see here the total independent expenditures, $32.5 million, 65 candidates targeted across 23 states. 30 million is from undisclosed donors. I mean, that's the thing. So I should say, it's unclear everybody that spent money into public first action. Let me show you. So this is a map. You can kind of see where the money's going. We've got almost $1 million here, which mostly is being spent for Celeste. And then they have this chart is just fantastic. So this one is interesting. Oops, I think I just messed it up. Hold on, let me try that again. Okay, this one's interesting because, how do we go to the left? Hold up. Can you see that? Okay, so you can see this is the OpenAI one, and they're funding it. I didn't do the research on this, but theirs goes through more different groups here. OpenAI funds through this one, and then they've got different groups. Perplexity AI, Leading the Future is theirs. Then it goes to Build America AI, 95 million goes here, plus 10 million from unknown sources. And then actually Dan McKay is getting money here. I don't know. I have to be honest with you. I don't know. I should say it should not be Dan McKay directly. I believe this is independent expenditure. So it'll be someone doing it. It should be somebody supporting Dan independently, if that makes sense. But the only problem here is it doesn't say how much money on this one. So interesting. I don't know what that means on this one. Now, then if you go down here, and OpenAI's goal is no regulation on AI at all. So that's what they're pushing. Anthropic is down here, and Anthropic's goal is to have regulation, but they're trying to do regulatory capture. So they want regulations that benefit their model and lock out competitors, and they've been very open about it. So they gave $20 million. Undisclosed donors gave another 30 to public first action. This is the 501c4 that is run by Chris Stewart, and then a Democrat. I can't remember the Democrat's name, but the two of them are doing it. I will say, Chris Stewart has set himself up a very lucrative lobbying business. So very unfortunate. Because I think lobbying is gross. But anyway, so then that went to Public First Political Action Committee. And then they have multiple PACs underneath that aimed at both Republicans and Democrats. So defending our values is used to support Republican candidates. They have spent almost $900,000 on Celeste Malloy, which is a huge amount, because I think it's the second biggest amount by this one. Let's see, here we go. So you can kind of see all of them now. Yeah, it's the second biggest. The biggest is to this Representative De La Cruz, but he or she, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, actually has the Austin and the San Antonio suburbs in Texas. So that's a big media market, expensive. That is not CD3. So $1.5 million there is not going to go very far because of how expensive it is. CD3, and no offense if you live in CD3, but that is not that market, right? I mean, St. George is the biggest. Well, I guess Utah County is bigger, but we're not the equivalent of a San Antonio, Austin. I mean, those are big cities. So just think about, I mean, it's a lot of money. And so defending our values is being used to support Republicans. You can see that here. I would say kind of probably more rhino-y, how I say this. They have another PAC called Jobs and Democracy. That's being used to support Democrats. And then they have another one called Abundant Future, also being used to support very grossly Scott Wiener in California. That guy's a total groomer. And then against this Chakrabarti guy. This was, this guy is like a socialist. And he used to be, he's the one that actually, I think, kind of created AOC. He was like her chief of staff for a long time. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But you can see huge dollar amounts. And this is my theory, is that the reason why they're spending money on Celeste is that CD3 is where they want to place more data centers. And so you have to, they target rural areas. They will take your water, they will take your land, and they'll make it unlivable around the data centers. And it's more than just, there's a lot of problems with the data centers. So the one we'll talk about today is tonal noise. Okay, so I'm going to play a little bit of this video for you so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay. Hey, Ricky. My dogs just came back from their bark fest. Here we go. Okay.
Fans, all the industrial equipment on these sites creates something called tonal noise. And I know we don't have time to talk about all the hazards, but the biggest hazard is tonal noise, known as infrasound. And it's noise that you necessarily don't hear, but you feel. This is absolutely not negligible. It's actually used to be used as a form of military torture. So if you want me to spin into that, I don't want to scare your viewers, but it's serious.
And isn't this what was allegedly used in Venezuela and in some military operations to some degree? Isn't that part of the same technology?
Yes, they use RF, EMF. Yes. Some of it I can't really talk to you about because I worked with people in the military that were developing some technology like this. They were plucked from our office. But the thing with tonal noise is a lot of people are like, oh, it's a hum, it's annoying. No, it's biological. And you have to think of a dog whistle. You can't hear it because it's too high pitched. You can't really hear tonal noise because it's too low. It's a low frequency that actually can raise the cortisol levels in your body. You have a stress response, and it attacks expectant mothers, children, especially those additionally on the spectrum that are neurodivergent, animals, elderly, and chronically ill. So it can elevate the cortisol stress response. It's a cardiovascular risk and a neurological risk because it puts your brain in constant fight or flight mode. And then with children with the frontal lobe development that they're dealing with, we're inhibiting the current development. Now, I'm not saying like, just because you're there, this is going to happen. Just like you can smoke and not get cancer, it doesn't remove the fact that it is carcinogenic. Tonal noise impedes the mating cycles of livestock and horses because they don't want to feed as well. They have almost like mental health issues, and it can lower their milk production. And also with crops, there's something called acoustic ecology and bioacoustics. You know how people used to play classical music to help their plants grow better? Same thing, stress responses of crops. So when I was in Kansas seeing all the wheat, I was like, oh my gosh. So the tonal noise is the worst hazard. It's not annoying. It has biological impacts. And here's the thing is that, Daniel, when you're in the workplace, all the calculations on the human impacts is based on an 8-hour time weighted average. Now we're putting industrial operations in residential zones with a 24/7 exposure that nobody has looked into. So when I know the exposures at 8 hours, I'm very scared when I see them at 24/7.
So you're saying, again, because you're an industrial hygienist, which means...
Okay. So this is what I thought. I thought this episode I just put up was really, really interesting, and it's worth a listen. They go through a lot of the risks involved with data centers and the problems. And this tonal noise one is, I'm very noise sensitive. So for example, when I was looking for a house, I don't want a house where I can hear road noise constantly. And I remember as I was with this real estate agent, we'd look at places. There's a point at which we'd get to the front door and he could hear the road noise and be like, okay, we don't need to waste our time. So we don't waste our time because I'm very sensitive to that kind of constant humming. I don't like it. But just imagine the type of industrial noise coming from a data center and where these are being built. So the Millard County ones will actually, they will cause the sound equivalent of 400 semis idling all day long. So if you're someone that lives anywhere near that, you're going to be feeling that noise. Your animals will be feeling that noise. Your plants will be feeling that noise. And the question is that worth it? Oh, yeah, sure, we can do that. Here, let me see. Mr. Producer, are we able to post the link to the video so people can see it here? I'll send it. Post. Give me 1 second here. Okay. And then also Marsgate says, I could build a fleet of boats with all the Celeste flyers that have hit my mailbox. I know. I've heard. Trust me, I've been here. People are sending me photos of them. I don't, this is an interesting question for you. Like, does it help? I just don't know. Like, do people get exhausted of it? I've gotten some flyers for, like where I am, we have a competitive Senate race and a competitive House race. So I've gotten our state House race. So those two. And I've gotten flyers for both candidates for both races. It hasn't been excessive though. Like, they're not sending me tons of them. They have, I think, I will say, I think on the Senate side, both candidates have come by my house. I don't think I've been home when they've come by, maybe, but I've gotten flyers. And then on the House ones, I don't remember, to be honest with you, if they've done. They don't seem to be as active, but definitely competitive. But the Celeste ones, I mean, there's a lot of flyers there. I will say, like, when I ran for clerk, I wish I had the money to do flyers. I do think it can be effective, but I think there might be a point at which people start getting annoyed because they're always seeing your face and they don't really want to see your face that much, Okay, Mr. Producer says he'll post the video on X, YouTube, and Rumble. So yeah, I know, Mr. It's a long video. It's an hour-long show. It's called the Conservative Review Podcast with Daniel Horowitz. And it says 4 days ago. I would recommend his podcast. He does a really great job. And really gets good guests on. This guest was excellent. Yeah, he's part of Blaze TV. That's right. That's what Mr. Producer says. But excellent podcast. So I hope to one day be as good as him with that. Okay, so we've got so Millard County, those data centers will end up making noise for 400. It'll be 400 semis all day long. That's what you're going to be hearing. And so just think about that. Like, how do you live near that? And if you notice what she said, it impacts expectant mothers. It impacts the neurodivergence. So if you've got kids that are on the spectrum, like, that's a real problem. Those human impacts, I think, are something that we should really be cognizant of. And if we don't have a sense of what that looks like, I don't know why we're rushing into this. Mating of animals, that kind of seems like a problem. If we've got trying to raise beef, for example, and the cows get impacted by this, is that really a good thing to have going on? And then crops as well. Like, I'm not really seeing a lot of discussion about these types of impacts when these elected officials are looking at whether to approve these facilities for their areas. And if you notice, like up in Box Elder County, they said, well, it's just grazing land, it doesn't matter. Well, okay, but maybe it does, because if it's going to cause tonal noise, for example, this is just one. And maybe we'll start talking about more of the other impacts of it in detail. But if the tonal noise is going to impact the cows mating, then isn't that kind of a problem and something we need to have a better sense of before we go crazy with this stuff? Now let me show. So here's one. These homeowners say they're having a hard time living next to the new massive OpenAI Stargate AI data center in Abilene, Texas. So Abilene, I think it's like, God, I'm trying to remember. I believe it's in the middle of the state. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. But it's a larger, like a mid-sized city, maybe. They say the noise is unbearable due to the 10 turbines used for power. The Stargate data center is planning on installing another 41 additional turbines, which will greatly add to the noise. The homeowners feel trapped and are brought to tears. The woman and her husband are veterans. The site will run 51 gas turbines plus dozens of diesel generators for backup. So in that show that I just showed you guys, they actually talk about the diesel generators as well. So it will increase particulate matter in the air, because the diesel generators, even though they're for backup, they have to be tested on a regular basis. And how often they have to be tested will depend on your locality. So if they have to be tested once a week, for example, that's all sorts of additional pollution you would have in your area and in the air. So if you have asthma, if you have children that have asthma, you have to like change the filters in your HVAC units more frequently. But also, like, that's not good for our air, and people here are already saying we have air quality problems. So here, we'll watch this for a second. The
long-term ramifications.
Omaira Garcia, or OG as she likes to be called, lives right next door to Stargate. We launched the thermal drone from her property to get a look at what's really going on.
My husband and I both served in the military. What initially brought us to Abilene was his military service. After being here for a couple years, we really just kind of fell in love with it. It took us a year to find this property. Just the views, the horizon, the sunrise, the sunset. It was just our own little piece of happiness. In 2025, Stargate started to break ground on the property. And all of a sudden, life changed. We had no idea what they were building there. And when they get there, there's just dust flying everywhere. We started taking a poll to see how often we have to change our filters. And it's every 2 weeks, because they're completely filthy and full. I didn't know about their expansion plan and what that looks like for our home. If we're already dealing with the noise difficulty with only 10 turbines that they have right now, I can only imagine how much more difficult it's going to be like. I feel trapped. We invest in our home, we serve our country, and we weren't even included in this process. We weren't given any time to understand what this impact was going to be on us. The long-term ramifications, we weren't given time to try to leave. So how do I feel? Upset.
All right, so how big of a problem are we talking here? They say they're going to...
Okay, so Mr. Producer, it's time to move, but the problem is their property is going to be worth less now because of all the noise and the data center by it. So they are trapped. I actually feel for this woman, because I think that they moved out there trying to find their forever home, and it got destroyed by a data center. I think it's sad. Let's see, Monica says it's to disrupt where people can live and force them into controlled housing zones like 15-minute cities. It probably is. But just think about that. Like, you have this home. They were in Abilene, Texas. Okay, so this is basically halfway between Dallas and Midland. I guess, I used to live there, so I know where it was. But if you looked at where they were located, it's probably that was all farmland, zoned agricultural, and it got changed to industrial to accommodate this. What was Stargate? Stargate is coming from the administration to push these data centers. I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not seeing the positives. So here's another one. Let's see. Well, let's look at this. And what about that human impact? Like someone like that, I hate to say this to people, but that person's probably going to go and vote Democrat now. Yeah. Let's look at this. Is in Michigan. This is also talking about sound pollution, because we're talking about tonal noise today, right? Here we go.
Do you hear that noise in the background?
No, it's actually getting
That's
me
the
dead.
sound of a hyperscale data center here in Dowagiac, Michigan. I'm Emma Brott with 16 News Now. Now today I've been talking to residents who are telling me just how loud this place is. Right now there's a class action lawsuit alleging that these loud noises are affecting 1,300 residents within a 1-mile radius of this hyperscale data center. A resident living just across the street from this data center tells me he's bought a decibel reader just to see how loud it is on an average day.
Right there, it's going between 61 and 64 decibels without us talking.
That resident tells me it's been affecting his wife's health and also his pregnant neighbor's health as well, giving her headaches if she stays outside too long just because of how loud it is.
Yeah.
Do you hear that noise in the background?
All right, that noise is annoying me. We're just hearing it in videos. Imagine though that you're hearing that 24/7. And are like, can human beings live near that? And then, it's going to be the same for animals because they're going to have the same sensitivities that we do. The difference is that they may not be able to communicate it, but it'll change how they behave, right? So again, we're not asking these types of questions and really digging into the types of impacts that these are having on people. I have another one for you. Let's see, is this the one that we just watched? Oh, we already saw this one. There's one more here. Okay, here we go. Okay, this one is being built by a zoo. So, I think they're not
Nashville, Tennessee. Now, at first, we are currently standing at 648 Grassmere Park, Nashville, Tennessee. Now, at first glance, it looks like nothing. It's an empty parking lot, an old office building. They want to tear this building down right here. And I need to let you know, that tree line right there, everything behind that is the Nashville Zoo. And there's actually a fence, and you can zoom in and see a gate right there. On the other side of that gate is a security post that the Nashville Zoo has had for a long time. They want to build a data center right here. And the CEO of the Nashville Zoo says that it's going to sit within 50 yards of some of the animals they've been trying to protect and breed for a long time. Let me show you where this is, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. A company called DC Blocks out of Atlanta has filed to build a 69,000 square foot data center right here. And I want to be fair to them, because the phone I'm filming this on and the phone you're watching this on, well, it's tied to a data center somewhere. We all live in this now. DC Blocks says that they're going to use closed loop cooling, and they're going to be keeping the noise to an acceptable level. Say we take them at their word. Here's the thing that none of those promises can fix.
All right. Just sorry, I want to pause. We'll actually talk about closed loop cooling next week. That's the latest thing that they talk about, as if that won't use any water. It turns out it actually does use water, and that the system isn't. It will need to be refreshed. It will need to get water added to it, and so you're not talking about a system that will not use water. It will still use water, like significant amounts of water.
The sound that this proposed data center actually makes isn't really even a loud one. It's a low hum, continual, a drone. And a low hum doesn't stop at a wall. It actually goes right through it. And 50 yards from that hum, clouded leopards, one of the hardest animals to breed in human care on Earth. The Nashville Zoo has spent decades bringing these animals back from the edge. And the zoo's own CEO says that they need calm and quiet in order to breed. And here's the thing, nobody's promising that the hum will stop. They're actually just promising that it'll be acceptable. But here's my question. Acceptable to who? A leopard? And this isn't a left or a right thing. The farmer in Robertson County is fighting one of these things. The activist in East Nashville is fighting one of these things. They're standing in the same line, they just don't see each other. Here, let me.
Okay, and we're going to close on this note today. The opposition to data centers is the most dangerous movement to the establishment that has ever, or that has really come about probably over the last 20 years, in that it is bipartisan. It is just regular everyday people rising up, trying to preserve their lifestyles, preserve their communities, against very powerful interests. And so the latest thing that you're hearing from everybody that is on the opposite side of this is that this, the grandma that shows up, the farmer that shows up, the average everyday people that show up, whatever their politics are being funded by China. It's because this is dangerous to them. It's people coming together on a common issue, and the issue is that they oppose data centers. They oppose what the establishment is trying to impose on us, and I think intuitively they understand what's happening. This is not just about data centers themselves; it's about what they are being built for. And I think most of those protesters understand that it is not about AI. I am sorry, I don't think it is. It is about surveillance, and that's what's being set up here. So when you saw all those people show up in Box Elder County, they were people across the political spectrum. I know that because I know people that were there that are conservatives. And then I hear there are these kind of establishment people in Utah who started this whole, oh, they're being funded by China. Well, I could reach out to some of these people. I know they're not being funded by China. Like, they're just middle-class people who are standing up saying, no, we don't want this in our state. We don't want what you are trying to do, to destroy, to take our land, to use our water, and to destroy our quality of life and our way of life. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that what people need to do is you need to stand strong and you need to keep pushing, because you're having an impact. The Box Elder data center is critical because the Millard County ones got approved and there really wasn't a lot of hubbub about it. And I feel bad for that woman that said people weren't paying attention, because I think in a way she was right. It got a little bit of coverage, but I don't think people fully understood what the ramifications of that were until more recently. The Box Elder data center really brought it to a head, in that now we can see like a huge facility using twice as much power as the entire state, which doesn't make any sense, being built on 40,000 acres. Some people have told me that the size of the full parcel was because that's how much they needed for water rights. It has nothing to do with actually building on all of it. And then the lack of transparency around the projects, which you see all the projects are like that. The Millard County one, Jewel Capital Partners is the one that we're funding it, I think, and they actually submitted the application. When I got a copy of the application I got it when it was approved. I emailed Jewel Capital Partners a couple of times and asked them, how much water will this project take? And they never responded. I could never get a response. I emailed multiple times because I'm pretty tenacious about stuff like this. Never got an answer. So anyway, that's my point, is like there's something happening out there. And I do think it's a positive thing. And I think you're seeing people work together where they can on an issue that's very important. This is about preserving our way of life. This is about ensuring that Utah remains Utah and that these places remain the way they are. Like, Millard County, with that type of construction, the county will totally change. And I don't know if the people that live there really want that or know what to expect. I don't know the Box Elder County residents really want to see man camps set up so they can build a data center, and then, which we all know, it'll be filled with H-1Bs. So the culture of those areas will completely change and be different. So that's what this is about. I think it's a new unified movement, and that's what's scaring the establishment. But we'll keep going down and talking about different negative aspects and different things to think about these data centers over the coming weeks. Let's see, Mr. Producer says, I've been in several data centers. I've heard the low hum. It's not annoying, but it has ramifications even with plants, let alone animals and humans. Yeah, he says it's not annoying. I think it's annoying, but I don't like noise. So then he says, put them in space. Yes. Marsgate says, when people finally found out that they are the product, it will be really late in the game. Oh yeah, 100%. I actually think what I'm afraid of is, in this effort to be reasonable, we're going to walk right into a full-on surveillance state. And then there ain't no turning back from that. Because like they're already talking about, I think I saw some video where Larry Fink, he heads BlackRock or something like that. He was talking about how they think the next, there's going to be like attacks on data centers. So they should put them in military bases and make sure they're protected. Like what he's talking about is he thinks people like us are going to attack the data centers. I'm not all about that, but I'm about let's stop them before it's a problem. So I'm hoping more people will wake up. We got to keep talking about it and help people understand what's going on and how to fight it. With that, we're at time. So it's been a pleasure. My name is Goud. This is the Goud Crowd. We are on every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. You can catch us on kmmu.org. You also on my X handle, which is at Goud, 4 Utah. And then Main Street Media, Utah, YouTube and Rumble, I think. Oh, and you can also follow at Media. Is that right? Oh, at Media Utah for KMMU's X handle as well. And I encourage you to follow them. So, and then there's one other thing I was gonna say. Oh, and in the interim, until next week, you can catch me, send me any tips you have and stuff on X. That's where I'm the most active. It's been a pleasure. Thank you always for listening, and we will see you next week.